dancing it up. You hear me? Wake up, people, wake up, wake up. Wake up, people, wake up now, wake up. Wake up, people, wake up, wake up. Wake up the people, Lord, wake up. Wake up, people, wake up, wake up. Wake up, people, wake up now, wake up. Wake up, people, wake up, wake up. Wake up the people, Lord, wake up. It's alright. It's okay. Remember, the sun will shine in the morning. God bless. Wake up.
This show is sponsored by Glass R Us, 730 Seven Sisters Road, London N15 5NH. Call Glass R Us for all your glazing needs on 0208 800 6663 for your glass and double glazing repairs, shelving, tabletops, splashbacks, mirrors, shower cubicles, balustrades and balconies.
You can trust Glass R Us because they are completely transparent.
Greetings, family. This is Brother Jegna. Here again. I hope you guys had a great week. This is another Afrocentricity Bookman show. We are continuing to read the excellent book called The Black Matrix by Franklin Jones. Franklin Jones. The book, my regular listeners will know, is all about the psychological warfare which is being set on the minds of black people, primarily in the USA, but this psychological warfare is really a worldwide phenomenon, that they can use the media, movies, newspapers, every sort of media you can think of really, to manipulate the minds of certain people, so that you do not need to fight a war against them. You could use the psychological effects, psychological warfare to shape their minds and shape their behaviors and their beliefs about themselves and also the world. So we are on chapter 5. So chapter 5 is the last chapter. Then we've got the conclusion of the book. I started it last week, but I thought let's go over it again just to make sure everybody has got a good understanding of what's happening. So chapter 5 is called The White Christianity, the greatest propaganda ever told. Again, white Christianity, the greatest propaganda ever told. I continue. There is a Bible scripture that reads, "Blessed are they that seek him with a whole heart," and that is Psalms 119:2. This chapter is written in the spirit of that scripture. It contains shockingly information for they that possess the critical thinking capability to recognize the truth when presented. So I believe that one speaks about the truth will set you free. The astounding information within this chapter will remove those false misperceptions that have been indoctrinated upon the black psyche by way of the white-controlled, grossly re-edited religion. It has profound implications for how we perceive ourselves and the world as a whole. It is vitally important, yet the facts contained herein are not based on some pie-in-the-sky theory or concept. This is a matter of finding the genuine truth regarding our true relationships with our true God and the purpose of our human existence, and finding the true way to fulfill that magnificent purpose. This explosive chapter is not just for religious people. It is for everyone. It affects all of our lives. Although the terminology of psychological warfare is modern, Its practice among white cultures is not new at all. History acknowledges that the white race's tendency to deceive and perpetuate false propaganda has an ancient pedigree that lies at the very heart of European culture and identity. For example, during the Christian Crusades, merciless white empires went into battle wearing crosses upon their armour, with a sword in one hand and a Bible in the other, to convert their enemies to Christianity, making them serve white deities that looked like the European conquerors. In fact, the white race's proclivity for using psychological warfare dates back more than 2,000 years. The Judeo-Christian tradition itself is a myth based upon lies that have been used to perpetuate white supremacy. There is perhaps no place where the white race's proclivity for deceit and propaganda is made clearer than in the history of Western religion. While religious scholars rewrote the African origin of Christianity, thus converting African religion, deities and important figures of the Bible into European ones, regardless of how absurdly inaccurate. Throughout history, prominent Western elites and European kings have always found it necessary to revise history and erase African people from all significant events of the world. Given these facts, the true history of religion can be very intricate and difficult to trace. Therefore, the goal here is to see whether the teachings of Jesus Christ survived unchanged after his death by examining the changes in both the Christian Church and the Roman Empire, and after the death of Christ and during the reign of the Roman emperors Constantine, who lived AD, that's in our era, 312 to 337. Examined here is the supposition that modern-day Christian traditions and beliefs are not actually Christian origin or of Christian origin, but instead they are the pagan Roman Empire under the edict of Emperor Constantine. Furthermore, a discussion of how white racist empires whitewash Africans' ancient history and religious teachings to create a new pagan Christianity and history is presented. Fallacies based upon these revisions were disseminated as the truth, causing us Africans to abandon the truth and believe falsehood in its place, thus undermining our good standing with our God. And again, check John 4:23. Also discussed are the effects of the events and religious changes made during Constantine's reign on both the Church and Rome. Additionally, an attempt to explain the results of Constantine's policies and reinterpretations on what Christians believe today is offered. Modern Christians reflects Roman influences more than the actual teachings of Christ. It is hoped that exposing the mythological basis for the Judeo-Christian tradition will enlighten readers regarding its use to perpetuate white supremacy. This is a risky and delicate endeavor, given the tremendous importance of religion in African culture. Accordingly, many African Americans are willing to devote their entire lives to their religious beliefs without ever researching their authenticity. However, does it not make sense to at least research it first? This is a very logical argument, and yet for more than 400 years African Americans, Africans in the diaspora have gone from the cradle to the grave blindly accepting the religious teachings without investigating them. It is incredibly astounding that so many African Americans commit their entire lives to religious belief systems with little or no knowledge of their origins or history. They spend their entire lives waiting anxiously to die and to go to heaven to see the face of Jesus. Thus anticipating their reward in the afterlife. Given that religion is deemed so extremely important to the black Christians, one would logically assume that blacks would study the history of their religion. However, quite to the contrary, most blacks do not. In fact, modern Christianity thrives on faith, with very little knowledge of education, with all education about the religion. How remarkable it is that an entire people could dedicate their entire existence to a belief without ever researching its authenticity. Imagine, for example, that someone were to give you a book and told you to live your entire life by its teachings and pay 10% of your earnings to its temples and to raise your children by its teachings. Wouldn't it be ill-advised to accept this book on blind faith and to never question or examine its authenticity? Obviously, it will be ill-advised to do so. In fact, it will be foolish. Sadly, this is precisely what black people in America and blacks elsewhere have done for more than 400 years. Religion has been the greatest tool used to conquer and convert the minds of black people. It was, in fact, the first form of psychological warfare ever used against African Americans. During slavery, black people were given a religion that taught them to believe in white deities, a white God, white Messiah, white angels, and white prophets. These depictions of white-only deities were deliberately done to subconsciously indoctrinate the false belief of white divinity and therefore superiority upon the minds of the African who were enslaved. In making the enslaved believe in white deities, it made them subconsciously believe that their slave masters, also being white, were closer to God or God-like. Moreover, during this process, the African slaves were taught to believe that this white God had ordained them to be enslaved, and that their black skin color was the result of a curse. It is therefore logical, then, that in order to free the black psyche, will require a thorough review and a dissection of the religion given to us by whites. Moreover, it was very effective brainwashing, because when you connect a belief system to a religion, its effects can be so much more profound and longer lasting. Let me repeat that. Moreover, it was very effective brainwashing, because when you connect a belief system, so what belief system will we be speaking about, family? The belief system is white superiority and black inferiority. So when you connect that belief system to a religion, its effects can be so much more profound and longer lasting. This white idolizing, black mortifying religious indoctrination process was used to make the enslaved Africans, and I'm sure you know all the answers to this, excuse me, just turning the page, was used to make the enslaved Africans more loyal to their masters. From the perspective of the slave masters, it made them better slaves. This conditioning has been left uncorrected and unremoved for generations. The effects of that brainwashing scheme, initially implemented more than 400 years ago, still continues upon the minds of millions of Africans even today. It is for this reason why it's not uncommon to visit a church with an entire black congregation and find its walls stunningly adorned with only pictures of white deities. The effects that mental conditioning program have continued through many generation lines. These white deities are now so indoctrinated upon the minds, souls and hearts of black people that most will now angrily defend, preferring to them saying that the colour of their deities are no matter or relevance. It doesn't matter what? Doesn't matter? Doesn't matter what colour the god is? But I always say, if it doesn't matter, why did they change the colour of these deities? Because the oldest deities in the world are black deities. I repeat, the oldest deities, i.e. that is the divine, God, angels, spirits, the oldest ones on every continent in the world are black. The oldest depictions of Mary and Jesus are black. You'll find this in Italy, Russia, Spain, Britain, Germany, Poland. It doesn't matter where. All the oldest images are black. Many were destroyed, but many are not destroyed. Many are still hidden away in the churches. And some of the churches where they are still on show, and when the priests are asked, well, why is that God got a black skin, and why has the mother got a black skin? They'll say, well, there was a storm, and the storm made the candles fall over, and there was a fire, and the candles smoke blacked the image. Well, there must have been some storm, because the images of Christ are black across all these churches. So that was some storm. But I continue. To take the standpoint that the preferentially for white deities among so many black people, and over black ones that look like themselves as being normal is ludicrous. Are we going to repeat that? To take the standpoint that the preferentiality for white deities among so many black people over the black ones that look like themselves as being normal is ridiculous. For many black people, God is revered as being the most highest entity within their lives. Therefore, it is logical that the continued perpetuated myth of God's whiteness will be psychologically ingrained, and psychologically ingrained feelings of white superiority and divinity, while subsequently causing self-contemptuous, mortifying feelings within the black psyches. It is also for this reason why many black people often feel greater sympathy towards the white Jewish Holocaust that resulted in an estimated 12 million deaths over their own black Holocaust that resulted in an estimated 50 million deaths. These behaviors among so many Africans are the direct result and legacy of that enslavement and even colonization process of which they were indoctrinated to believe in the divinity of whites only. So let me just interject here very quickly. Let me say this is the Afrocentricity Bookman show. Don't forget, every Sunday between 4 and 6 on Bless Radio. Let me say that many of us are unaware of what happened during colonization, because we who were taken into bondage into the so-called West Indies were indoctrinated with these white images. Initially, they really didn't give us the white images because they thought that African people didn't have souls. So if we haven't got soul, then the Bible will be no good to us. But eventually they realized that they could use the religion because we was escaping, chopping them down, burning down the plantations and the fields. They said, how can we control these people more? They decided to use the Bible. That is why the Bible was given to us, because they could use it as a tool. Because if God said, allegedly, obey your slaves, then we would believe, well, God said we must be slaves and obey our slave masters. So they put, as I said, they as we just said a little while ago, they created a belief system, which is obviously white supremacy, and attached it to the Bible. So we believe that maybe it's been sanctioned by God himself. So we must follow what God himself says, because why? He's God. He's the strongest, greatest, biggest, all-powerful, all-knowing entity in the whole planet. So you must do what that person says, otherwise you're going against God. And that's why some of us don't want to get rid of the image, because we believe that, well, you can't tamper with that. That's the image of God. So it's a very good trick. Imagine if you want to control people's minds, it's an excellent trick to say God sanctioned that you should be enslaved. God sanctioned that these people should be above you and dominate you and abuse you and use you and abuse you. And when they use and abuse you, you forgive them because you believe that these are God's people. Oh, we forgive you. That's why when we used to read the Old Testament, because the Old Testament, remember, is more eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, blood and fire. But the New Testament, remember, which is written in Greek, I must remind you, wasn't written in Hebrew, it was written in Greek, because the Greeks wrote it, yeah? Because the Romans, the educated Romans, spoke Greek. Because the Greek was give them the knowledge, because the Romans didn't really have a culture. So they used Greek. And always remember, the Greeks were educated by Africans, because they went to school in Africa. But when they wrote it now, they wrote it in a certain way, because the Romans used it actually to control the lands that they conquered. Because if you control the people's minds, you don't have to worry about their actions, because you control their minds, so you control their actions. And that's where the concept really comes from. And that's what it's all about. So later on now, obviously when the Romans passed away, Europeans still realized, boy, you could use this to control people. And that is what's been done. It's no different with Islam as well. Islam says when they conquer the lands, they say, well, I've got a sword in one hand and I've got a Quran in the other hand. Which one do you want? And if you want to stay alive, generally you're going to go for the Quran. And then when you're indoctrinated with that teaching, and what does indoctrination mean? They take a doctrine and place it into your mind. Indoctrination. And then after a generation, you begin to believe it. And then when your children are born, you teach them the same thing, and then they believe it, and they pass it on to their children. I think you can understand what I'm saying there. So indoctrination took place first, and they said, and I said before, it normally takes a generation to indoctrinate our people. Because one generation, you'll have a new generation coming up, the children of the indoctrinated generation, and the children get indoctrinated the same way. Because obviously children believe what their parents tell them. Why? Because they're their parents. Their parents are not going to lie to them. Their parents love them. The parents are the only first people to give them love. So when they get indoctrinated as well, the children will pass it on to their children. So then you've got an indoctrinated grandchildren, great-grandchildren. And that's where we are today. So we don't question things because we believe that we're going against God. But you must remember that the Creator gave us a brain to use, to analyze things. And this is why we need to move away from the European Arab paradigm of understanding the world around us and go back to our own paradigm, which is the African paradigm. Black people, original people on the planet, who created the concept of divine, rituals, prayers, ceremonies, and all the symbols of religion as well. People have taken these symbols because they, through military enterprise and obviously deceit as well, managed to overpower us and influence us with that power. And now they've indoctrinated us with their belief system. Because there's a blues song, and if you go, no matter where you go in the world, everybody knows this song. Even if they don't know the song, they know the song. Because the song is, if you're white, you're alright. And if you're yellow, just mellow. But if you're brown, you can stick around. But if you're black, get back, get back, get back. So they use that system around the world. And we believe it. We'll believe the curse of Ham, because it was taught to us. The curse of Ham was created by Babylonian Jews, Europeans, Babylon. And they created it through, obviously, racism. And people said, oh yeah, it's part of the Bible, it's true. These are the people who've been cursed. It doesn't say anywhere in the Bible that black people have been cursed by you, but they taught us that it meant that we've been cursed, so we believe it. Maybe we're cursed, and the colour of our skin. But the colour of our skin created civilization. People with the colour of our skin, melanated people, are the people who brought the arts and sciences to the whole planet. This is why it's important that we understand our history, we'll understand who we are, and we'll understand our purpose in life. And the purpose of life is not to be where we are at the moment. Our purpose is to be top shelf where we always was. Someone said very recently that the world is our realm and Africa is our throne. I am well aware that thousands of black people will read this chapter and who are very sincere in their devotion to Christianity and totally accept its depictions of white deities. They are, however, totally unaware that these false depictions of white deities were used and are still used to subconsciously ingrain feelings of white superiority within the black psyche. Today, this white venerating religious indoctrination process is continued when black parents teach their children to believe and pray to white deities. It also continues every time that a black child enters a church and sees the white deities upon its walls, or read an illustrated Bible that depicts all the biblical heroes as white. And also when watching movies or television showing shows depicting black characters as white. Millions of black people have lived and died without ever studying the true origin of their Christian religion, or how their enslaved ancestors became Christians. Many hold the belief that to merely present such a question is to commit a sin. Some even believe that those who would question it are under the influence of Satan himself. These sentiments are often also echoed by many black ministers. Subsequently, as a result of these norms, the majority of Africans therefore go from the cradle to the grave, never at any time knowing this truth. Do you know this origin of black Christianity? Most Africans are unaware that their spiritual experiences of trance shaking when feeling a spiritual connection with their creator and speaking in tongues has nothing to do with Christianity. In fact, when such behavior was displayed by the early enslaved Africans, their masters often expressed a feeling of shock because they found the displayed behavior as being hedonistic and alien to the Christian religion they were teaching their enslaved. They will also share these stories with others. They share these stories of the slaves' behaviors with their house guests, believing that it proved that the slaves somehow lacked mental capacity. This is because these expressions of spirituality that we now perceive as Christianity are in fact totally African expressions. So this is the Afrocentricity Bookman show, and we are reading The Black Matrix by Franklin Jones. So it's very important to distinguish that, because remember, if we are reading Christianity and we go into, we start to speak tongues and we go into a trance, in Christianity it's seen as okay. But if we did that with Voodoo, for example, the African spirituality which came from Benin region in particular, and it spread around the world wherever Africans went and took it with him, that's seen as devil worship. So why is one trance and talking in tongues seen as devil and another one seen as good? These are the questions we need to ask. Millions of black people have lived without and died without studying the true origin of their Christian religion. Most Africans are unaware of their spiritual experiences of trance shaking. Although it is difficult for some to accept, modern Christianity is founded more on faith than on education, and the enlightenment concerning one's religious beliefs. In fact, this faith-based ignorance is often encouraged under the pretext of faith. Many blacks have boasted about their ignorance to their religion, saying, well, I may not know all the stuff about how the Bible was written, but I certainly have faith in it. These types of ignorant declarations are especially prevalent in many of the black churches. The point is that in examining Catholicism, from which modern Christianity was derived, it becomes apparent that this founding church was not closely followed the teachings of Jesus. What, if any, influence did the powerful Roman Empire have on the original Christian text? And how do we distinguish truth from belief? How do we penetrate years of historical distortions to find original truth? The Bible says that you will know a tree by the fruits it bears. With this concept in mind, let us examine today's modern society. The Romans were themselves pagans, and today the entire Western Hemisphere continually observes many of these Roman pagan rituals and traditions. Nowadays we live in a world in which prayer is removed from the schools, yet Halloween is a national pastime. That's a very good point. Many schools, prayer has been removed, but Halloween, devils and monsters and skeletons and who knows what else are natural, are very natural. Growing up, when I grew up in this country, Halloween wasn't around. Then now and again you hear it talked, but now we just follow. If you notice, the British culture follows the American culture, maybe 15, 20 years behind. Whatever happens in the US normally arrives here, and we just pick it up wholeheartedly and start to run with it. And it's normally driven by money, because capitalists will run with it. And we can make money from this stuff. That's how it gets into the culture. But we think it's part of the culture, but really, it's not my culture. Maybe European culture is some people's culture, but I'm not a European. Yeah. I think one thing we need to recognize, people, is that identity can be split into two parts. One part is interchangeable, can be changed, but another part is rock solid, you cannot change it. So what am I talking about? Identity is made up of two parts. One is the kind of book, legal identity, like a passport and a nationality. And the other part is ethnicity, blood, kin. So for example, I've got a British passport, or I've got a UK passport, whichever one it is. But maybe tomorrow I could apply to become a Nigerian national, or a Ghanaian national, or a Swedish national, or a Chinese national. And if they accept me, then my nationality will change. I could become Swedish, Nigerian, Polish, if they accept me. So your nationality can change. However, my ethnicity, I'm of African descent, that cannot change. We need to understand this. We need to understand this. They don't teach us at school because we are miseducated at school, really. And sometimes we are de-educated at school. So we always need to understand that our identity is made up of two parts. One part is changeable, your nationality, but your ethnicity, your family, your kin, that cannot change. The Bible says that you will know the truth, but my apologies, you will know the tree by the fruits it bears. With this concept in mind, let us examine modern society. The Romans were themselves pagans, and today the entire Western Hemisphere continually observes many of those Roman pagan rituals and traditions. Nowadays we live in a world in which prayer is removed from the schools, yet Halloween is a national pastime. A holiday takes its origins from the pagans, Satan worshipping druids. Even Halloween, Easter and Christmas are all connected with pagan rituals and traditions. The names of our weekdays are also of pagan origin. Monday is derived from the moon's day. Saturday is derived from Saturn's day. And Sunday, including it being observed as a day of worship, is traditionally connected with the worship of the sun god. Christmas, celebrated on December 25th, was originally a pagan celebration of the sun god. The same is true of our months of the year, such as July, which is named after Julius Caesar. Many traditions on holidays observed today are connected to Roman paganism. We Africans are unwittingly serving pagan beliefs in the place of the teachings of the original Christians. And it has become a worldwide phenomenon. Because when you got the power of the media, books in schools, magazines, satellites itself, then you can shape the minds of people with any foolishness, devilishness that you want to. Alternatively, you could indoctrinate people with the truth, justice, harmony, reciprocity, equality, balance could be used to make people think about unity, to think about respect, honor. But unfortunately, these things. Let me interject 1 minute. I'll be watching a little bit on American TV. You know that they're doing an impeachment trial against Trump. It's been estimated. Remember, I think it's the New York Times. Trump has lied something like, I can't remember, 20,000 times. I can't remember how many thousand times. Please just check it out. Trump habitually lies. However, he's making this the norm. So the people who try to defend him now is because he's been impeached in like Congress. The people defending him are telling the same lie. So imagine you're a lawyer and all you're doing is telling lies. It's crazy. It's crazy. So the lie becomes a norm. What sort of society would you be living in when the lie is the norm? Our most ancient cultures, the truth was a norm. It had to be. Because the people wouldn't allow anything else. But sadly, the lie has become the norm. So what does that do to the minds of children if the lie becomes the status quo? What are they going to teach their children? So you can see society, Western society in particular, because these are ones we live within, boy, oh boy, oh boy, what's it going to be like in 10, 20, 50 years? So that's what we need to do, to educate our children to the right way, so they know about truth. They knew about harmony and balance and reciprocity. We really need to go back to our own African culture. This is what's going to save us. If we go into the culture of these people, I hate to think what our culture will look like, our people look like in 50 years' time. I'm watching TV programs now. Every TV, it started in the USA, but every TV program we look at now, men are kissing men, women are kissing women, like to say it's normal. So they're normalising behaviour, which back in the day they would never show, but now they're making it normal. So when children grow up now, they're going to think, oh, that's normal for me, a man want to kiss a man. It is part of your culture, baby, it's normal, but we are black people. It's never been part of our culture. It's never been part of the culture. If it's your culture, that's cool. You go ahead with it and do what you're doing. But you should not remember Obama. He went to Kenya and he said to Kenyan Prime Minister, like, yeah, you really need to accept sodomy. And the Kenyan Prime Minister says, listen, we've got much more important things to think about than that sort of behaviour. So it's sad that Obama, even though he's got African roots, and obviously European roots as well, he allows the European roots to influence his life. We're not saying harm should be done to anybody. You are who you are. But don't try to influence me with something that's not part of my culture. Why should I change my culture to adopt what your culture is telling me is good? They went to Africa and they said polygamy is bad, is wrong. Stop doing it. A man and a woman is wrong. However, a man and man is great. Yeah, keep doing that. So polygamy is wrong, man and woman is wrong, but man and man, a woman and woman, you know. Man and woman, let me tell you how powerful man and woman is. Man and woman are so powerful, they can create life. Can a man and a man create life? I'm not talking about test tube, because those things are not normal. Can a woman and a woman create life? But a man and a woman can create life. That's how you know how powerful it is. And that's how you know that's the right way. I'll continue. Given these pagan connections to modern Christianity, how can we be certain today that the Romans have given us the accurate teachings of the man that they saw fit to murder? Which is a very good point. Moreover, how can one expect a true interpretation of the Bible given that white scholars who have justified slavery by saying that the black race is inferior wrote them? Another very good point. But because today's Africans are the direct descendants of the enslaved Africans or colonized Africans that were brought to the Americas, South, North, Caribbean Sea, and they embraced the religion that was given to them, their slave ancestors or colonized ancestors on the continent itself, straight from the mouths of slave masters and colonizers, and then it's been passed down from generation to generation. These slave masters and colonizers who claimed to be Christians brutalized, raped, and lacked even the basic acceptance of black people as human beings. The Bible was used to justify our enslavement, and it taught the enslaved to obey their white masters. How can we accept a religion like that, black people? How can we accept it? Biblical justification for the divinely ordained subordination of Africans came through the curse of Canaan, a descendant of Ham. White biblical scholars attempt through colour prejudice to label Ham, son of Noah, as the cursed seed. The curse was because Noah's son Ham had evidently performed some shocking act deserving of a curse. Therefore, a seed, Canaan, bears this curse, and blacks are supposedly the direct descendants of Canaan. Many churches, in the name of Christianity, still teach this racist view. So, even if you know history, you know the curse of Ham is kind of crazy. Because who were the children of Ham? The children were Egypt, greatest civilization there's ever been. Canaan, where are the original people, where the so-called biblical lands. Babylon, and also Shinar. So all these were great civilizations. High culture, ethics and morals. So how can they be cursed? However, the people who came from the caves who was busy eating each other, murdering each other in the caves of Europe, somehow we think that their civilization is better civilization. Why? Because these people come down and rewrite history and steal our history. So history, we have to understand history, because history is the only thing that explains the world. History is the only thing that explains the world. And this racist so-called curse of Ham derived directly from the Jewish Babylonian Talmud, which is their book, was used by white slave masters to justify their enslavement of Africans. Thus, it was the divine will of God that they were enslaved and that they obey their white masters. This racist myth is totally inaccurate, given that there is evidence of African remains that predates the timeline given for Noah's flood. Therefore, Canaan's birth by thousands of years. The thing is, we are tied up with the Bible. We let the Bible dominate our lives. You can understand why, but we need to break free. The Bible, as well as the Quran, are made up from fragments from the periphery of our culture. I'll repeat that. These divine books, we are told are divine books, are made up from fragments from just the periphery of black people's culture, of African culture. But we're taking up these fragments and running with them, rather than going back to the source. And that is what is key about African thought. We must go back to our ancestors' teachings to understand, because that's the only way we're really going to understand who we are and what our culture should be. The culture of like men loving men and women loving women is European culture, it's not African culture. If Europeans want to do it, that's fine. They should go ahead. But it should not impose onto Africans that we're supposed to be, men supposed to be loving men and women supposed to be loving women. Because it's not part of our culture. If people want to have that part of the culture, have it, because it's your culture. But please don't impose onto my culture. This racist so-called curse of Ham, derived directly from the Jewish Babylonian Talmud, was used by the white slave masters to justify their enslavement of Africans. Thus, it was the divine will of God that they were enslaved and they will obey their slave masters. This racist myth is totally inaccurate, given that there is evidence of African remains thousands of years older than the Noah's flood. But let me tell you that these things in the Bible are not real. Do we really believe that there was a flood and 2 of every animal got onto a ship? Do you know how many animals are in the world? How big would that ship have to be? Well, these things are really failed to remember. The Bible is full of wisdom. I do agree with that. But within it is allegories. We're not supposed to take everything literally. The stories, many of them, are to give us teachings. So we're supposed to learn some facts from it. But there's a great deal of wickedness in the Bible as well. That's what I could never accept it when you read it, because when you read just certain a few chapters, you think, oh, it's all good stories in there. But you need to read the Bible yourself. And then you'll understand what's in there. And what's in there is hatred of women, hatred of children, all kind of terrible things goes on in the Bible, by the way. So some evidence suggests the indigenous population of the land described as Canaan were Africoid. And we've got their pictures. We know that Africa, we've got the pictures. Because when Babylon conquered Canaan, they carved pictures in their palace walls of what these people look like. And they're us. The people of Canaan are black people. This racist myth is also totally inaccurate, given that the Canaanites traditionally formed a later, lighter-skinned nation of people living around the Mediterranean Sea. In 1928, a discovery near the sea on the north coast of Syria, near an underground passage, led to the tomb Minet el Beida, translated to mean the White Haven. The natives of the area say that a long time ago it was a dwelling place of gods, of the white ancestors. So I'm not even sure about this stuff I'm reading to you here. Yeah. In fact, the title White Haven can be seen as a direct description of the Canaanites as white people, which is a load of rubbish. The Canaanites believed that God believed in God Baal and the goodness of fertility, and were a race of people who adored the sensuality of the flesh. The cults and sensuality were regarded as the worship of gods because of their depraved practices, demonic rites, pornography, idolatry. They came under divine judgment. A statue of their fertility goddesses was found at the location. An ivory relief of a bare-breasted fertility goddess of Canaan has been found in a vault in the harbour area of Ugarit, which is like around Syria, I believe, Lebanon, Syria. Shows a goddess bearing a Caucasian characteristics. So what it is, we need to go back to the root, because sometimes when we see these things, we need to know the dating of it. We shouldn't just pick things up and assume stuff. People have lied to us so many times and so frequently, we cannot accept anything without doing our own research. Because of our awareness that in ancient times, people most often made their humans like gods and goddesses in their own racial images. This statue is evidence that Canaanites were white skinned and not black. Black skin is not a curse. White is absence of colour, while black is the presence of all colours. White biblical scholars, however, for centuries hid this fact to perpetuate the justification of enslavement of the black race. Surely these questions of fact should encourage Africans to better educate themselves about the origin of their beliefs. It is in fact profoundly absurd to accept a religion from a people whose behaviour, such as the denial of rights to others and their lack of acceptance of other people as human, are directly contrary to the very religion that they are given to you. Because I've said it before, how can you accept the Bible from a people who broke every commandment? Every tenet in the book they say you must follow, they broke every single one. But we're going to accept a Bible from these people? What did the Bible do to them or do for their morality and their ethics if they break every commandment there is? But let me say, Africans do have a particular arrogance. What do I mean by that? Because we are the religious people, because we are the first people to talk about the Creator, we believe that we can take a low-down piece of religious writing and bring it to a high level. Because that is where we're so arrogant in that way. We think, oh, don't worry, we know better than the people who gave us the book. But the book itself, the root, we need to understand. To accept any religious belief system from whites under the circumstances which black people of the world have suffered is outrageous and ridiculous, to say the least. The truth has been suppressed for many centuries, but it is information that every black person needs to know. The truth is astounding and vitally important for the mental liberation of black people. So what we're going to do, people, we're going to take a short break and we're going to be back on the other side. This is the Afrocentricity Bookman Show. We'll have a short break and we'll be back on the other side.
This show is sponsored by Glass R Us, 730 Seven Sisters Road, London, N15 5NH. Call Glass R Us for all your glazing needs on 0208 800 6663. For your glass and double glazing repairs, shelving, tabletops, splashbacks, mirrors, shower cubicles, balustrades and balconies.
You can trust Glass R Us because they are completely transparent.
Shout it out loud, yeah. Where is the black man's paradise that Marcus Garvey fought for yesterday? We're still fighting for today, yeah. Where is the black man's paradise that Marcus Garvey fought for yesterday? We're still fighting for today, yeah. Black man's paradise. Martin Luther King fought for yesterday, and we're still fighting for today. This may be harsh to say, but we're living in a white world. It's a statement that many fear to say, but Jah is our protector and we fear not to say. It's a prejudice word, yeah, it's a prejudice word. Where is the black man's paradise? Malcolm X fought for yesterday, and we're still fighting for today. Where is the black man's paradise? Now you're being held as fought for yesterday, and we're still fighting for today. Rastafari, man still stands strong. Giving thanks and praise to the Almighty One, and looking forward to reach Mount Zion. And I man say, Zion, I'm coming home to you. Holy Mount Zion, I'm coming home to you. They said I don't have no rights in a Babylon, because I don't know how the West was won. Neither I can't change their plan. The West is controlled by the Ku Klux Klan. That's why I say, Zion, I'm coming home to you. Teach the youths them right, but not teach them wrong. Jackal up on the youths, cause the youths are strong. Look to Africa, that I feel your mama land. And down Africa, where you find Mount Zion. And I must say, Zion, I'm coming home to you. Say, Holy Mount Zion, I'm coming home to you. I cannot what the people of this world want to say, neither what the people of this world want to do. Many are called, but the chosen of you. What you gonna do when Jaja call on you? I man say, Zion, I'm coming home to you. Oh, Holy Mount Zion, I'm coming home to you. I faced a lot of trials and tribulation, but through all of that I must still stand strong. Still giving praise to the Almighty One, and looking forward to reach Mount Zion. And I must say, Zion, I'm coming home to you. The bingy man name says, Zion, I'm coming home to you. They said I don't have no rights in a Babylon, because I don't know how the West was won. Neither I can't change their plan. The West is controlled by the Ku Klux Klan.
One more time, I don't know, sir. Holy Mount Zion, that's where the foundation built. Well, to this, you know, so everything have to full before it spill. Let's see you. Oh Lord, well make them know Babylon, why you scrape, you spill. What you don't have, every ghetto youth will can't take over. Oh no better be still, and left from boy, you call your gun and run nil. Hey, yo, why you scrape, you spill. What you don't have, every ghetto youth will can't take over. Oh no better be still, and left from boy, you call your gun and run nil. Oh you man, Babylon, you them brain, you them over again, so you them figure down the chain. Babylon, you them brain, they mark how to be so like them a Bookman. Babylon, you them brain, them all the fighting serve, and them a shipping cocaine. Babylon, use them brain, but them can say all my them all burning. Oh, what's a agony and no what a shame. To see my black brother going all down the drain. Man made to suffer and no man to feel pain. They make the mommy, my sister I say, oh what a shame. Brother and my father fish up sugar cane. On the plantation and that stress and shame. On the man, on them foot that does the shackles and chain. Now them take it off and put it on them brain. To them ammunition they got down the drain. Now the youth they realize to show the highly name. Man no bed fire, that mean we can't tame. One thing is hard is higher, one thing is aim. This will be kept up the road and them a go down the train. And when you scrape you spill, what we don't have, every ghetto youth will can't take. Oh no better be still, and left from boy you call you gonna get killed. Oh what a crisis you would try face. This could them a come with them kick, just to take every bit. Nothing me no know, you are the boss for your kids, but over here you won't believe in it. I tell them no, could them, I not the board them practice. Now I see them on the face and on them hold off of it. Hey, you're not being kind. I want you up but now you leave us behind. Now something drop from your back, nothing not touch it cause of mine. What you want to us, so no forgive me every time. Use them brain, shoot them on the ghetto, you them figure down the drain. Babylon, use them brain, they mark hard it is, oh Lord, them a Bookman. Babylon, use them brain, them all the fight against German, them a ship
smoking. Babylon, use them bread. With them tell us it's all right, them are gonna burn in a flame. But this is one thing I cannot overstand. Don't teach me nothing about the Asian plan. In the school and the college and the institution, the curriculum that I get is European. Teach me about Marco Polo and Napoleon. Teach me nothing about the River Nile Bank. Where civilization it began. You said thou shalt not steal and should not kill no one. Still you steal, treasurize and then you teach wrong.
Slave and you murder all my dad and me mom.
But we keep Babylonian, you will love to go.
If I could reach the border, then I would step across. So please take me to the border. No matter what's the cost, 'cause I'm leaving it. I'm leaving out of Babylon. Leaving out, I'm leaving out to Rome. Leaving out to Rome, I'm leaving out to this land. This place could never be a home. Say we want go home. Say we want go home. Yes, we want go home. Say we want go home. Where the milk and honey flow. Say we want go home. That's where we want to go. Say we want go home. Africa we want to go. Say we want go home. Where the milk and honey flow. Say we want go home. If I could reach the border, then I'd step across, yeah. So please take me to the border, and I will pay the cost, 'cause I'm leaving it. I'm leaving out of Babylon. Leaving out, I'm leaving out to Rome. Leaving out to Rome, I'm leaving out to this land. Leaving out to Rome. We want go home. We want go home. Yeah, no, we want go. Say we want go home. Leaving out the road. Say we want go home. Got to step across. Say we want go home. We want go home. Say we want go home. We want go. Say we want go home. Don't live up strong. Say we want go home. We want go home. Say we want go home. So can we get? Say we want go home. The cultivate. Say we want go home.
This show show is sponsored by Glass R Us, 730 Seven Sisters Road, London N15 5NH. Call Glass R Us for all your glazing needs on 0208 800 6663 for your glass and double glazing repairs, shelving, tabletops, splashbacks, mirrors, shower cubicles, balustrades and balconies.
You can trust Glass R Us because they are completely transparent.
We're back on the other side. This is Brother Jegna. This is the Afrocentricity Bookman Show. We are continuing to read The Black Matrix by Franklin Jones. This is the final chapter for the conclusion. This is about the religious imagery. We've touched this, a few books we've read already during this show. We've touched this subject here, but this gives you maybe a broader perspective on it. A perspective of it. Anyway, I'll continue. The Bible states, "My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge," and that is Hosea chapter 4 verse 6. So that's why I said to you, the Bible has wisdom in there, but what we must not do is accept it face value, that everything in it is real. Adam and Eve is real. Believe that we've got talking snakes or things like that. Noah ark, he got 2 of every animal onto his ark, and everything else died. And also the curse of Ham, somehow our skin is cursed. The original people of the planet who brought the arts and knowledge and wisdom onto the planet, we're cursed. But once you understand that we were told these stories so that people can dominate us, we know how to remove ourselves away from that domination. However, this ignorance has run its course. We now live in the age of information, so there's no longer an excuse to hold on to ignorance. To find the true role of black people in the history of religion, it is necessary to conduct a thorough recapitulation of the history of Christianity. Most black people are unaware of the fact that the earliest Christian church, which is a Coptic church, was established in Alexandria, Egypt, which is in Africa. This church is said to have been established by St. Mark, who was from North Africa originally, an African. He is said to have, the writer of the Gospel of St. Mark established this church almost 2,000 years ago. He is considered the first bishop of the church. The church is also known as the Church of Alexandria, or the seat of St. Mark. This African church was leading the other churches of the ecumenical councils, being the guardian of Christianity, and since the day it was established, has walked through hard times. It found itself a victim of many political plots and attacks of the Roman Empire. The history of this early African Christian church is rife with persecution and difficulties. Let me say to you that when you sometimes see the movies and you show those putting the Christians in the arena and feeding them to lions, these are Africans, by the way, because most of these arenas was in Africa, North Africa, when the Romans had their empire in North Africa. Africa used to be the breadbasket of Rome, because the land was so fertile they could fuel the whole Roman Empire from the food that they grew in Africa. But most of the arenas that they used to feed people to the lions, many of them were African people. They're feeding to lions, by the way. So the history of this early African church is rife with persecution, difficulties, disliked and mistrusted, because Rome, remember, Rome fought Carthage, was again a North African empire, Hannibal, another African, and Rome, every day, and I think we can maybe learn from this, every day when the Romans met another Roman, said, "Hello, Roman, good morning. Carthage must be destroyed." The African civilization of Carthage, where Hannibal was the ruler of it, must be destroyed. So every Roman, every day, Carthage must be destroyed. Carthage must be destroyed. And the Rome hated North Africa because of the greatness of their civilizations. And obviously, Europeans, even like today, they like to control everywhere and dominate everywhere. So maybe we can learn by that. So every time we see each other, we should say, "Good morning, my African brother and sister." Every day when you meet somebody. Imagine if you did it every day, that we realize that we are Africans and our culture is African culture. We're reminding ourselves every day. There'll be a serious ground shift. And imagine our children as well. When our children hear this as well. So I think we'll work on that one. I'll bring that one up again. Anyway, the death of Yeshua, the Anointed, later named Jesus Christ by the Greeks, the followers of Christ continue to endure persecution and opposition at every turn. The church suffered, and thousands of his children were martyred. And I said to you before, the first people to be murdered for Christianity was 3 women: Felicita, Perpetua, and Nymphano. African women, first ones to be persecuted, or first martyrs of the Christian religion, but not the Christian religion with Jesus Christ, because within that religion originally there was no living person walked the earth. It's very symbolic, and it was about the spirit. The Romans saw them as a threat to the crown and believed that religion was a governmental department, and that it was a duty of the government to maintain favor in the eyes of the gods. The Romans continued to persecute Christians severely. However, this did not seem to hinder them. Under these circumstances, the Christian church grew considerably since its foundation. It had grown so much that the Romans could no longer ignore it. Clearly, the two could not coexist without change in the existing order. Apparently, Constantine recognized that the persecution of the Christians had failed, and that anyone who hoped to control the empire, or even an important part of it, must make peace with the Christian movement. It was certainly a political advantage and to gain the support and control of the church. And we must remember that Constantine, he had a dream, and in the dream it said, "Conquer by this." And what was that? It was a cross. So his dream told him that use the cross to conquer by. Just go into Google if you have to. Google it. Conquer by this. Constantine, the emperor, Roman emperor, had a dream, and the dream told him to use the cross to conquer the world. The Romans, having crucified Jesus, continued to harass Christians for many centuries. So the crucifixion of Jesus is not real, by the way. I'm just letting you know that. The crucifixion of Jesus was not real because there was never any Jesus. Jesus was created by the vote of 380 bishops. I can't remember the exact number. 300 bishops at the Nicene Conference, which was called by Constantine. The bishops voted, should we make this Jesus person real? And they voted yes, and he became real. We must understand history. The Romans, having crucified Jesus, continued to harass Christians for many centuries thereafter, and then remarkably formed the powerful Roman Catholic Church. Therefore, with his first obligations remainder to the empire, Constantine, the emperor of Rome, himself a pagan and long-time adversary of the Christians, declared himself a Christian and became the first Christian emperor. He appointed himself leader and overseer of the Christians and pagans. So you see that he killed Christians, and then all of a sudden he became the leader of the Christians in one swift swoop. This, with amazing rapidity, the position of the Christians had reversed. This merger stopped their years of persecution by Rome. Christianity was now considered a religia, or a licensed cult, meaning Christians had a right to progress in their faith without fear of legal obstacles. In addition, those who had been deprived of their status and legal power regained their positions. They were given freedom of assembly, and property that had been confiscated during the period of persecution was returned to the original owners. At last, they were legally equal to other religions. They held Constantine as the champion of their cause. These developments did not make Christianity a state religion, as it was generally asserted, but it only legalized it and popularized it, thus paving the way for the Catholic hierarchy. Remember, the word Catholic means universal, by the way, yeah, universal. The Catholic hierarchy, which marked a new era in the history of Christian church. Finally, a great Roman emperor had taken Christianity that begun by the Africans, by the way, thus laying the foundation for Catholicism. As time went by, Constantine portrayed himself as God's appointed sovereign, rewarded with favor. However, while this conversion and the merging of Christianity with paganism stopped the persecution of Christians, it also led to many changes in Christianity initiated by Constantine. His involvement in deciding the church doctrine and practices is most readily seen in the events of the Council of Aries, which is AD 314, and the Council of Nicaea, which is the key one, 324 AD. On June the 9th, 324 AD, the Council of Nicaea convened, commissioned, with the purpose of merging Christianity with paganism. More than 2,000 church leaders, including 300 bishops, over 300 bishops, attended this first Universal Council of Christendom under an edict from Emperor Constantine. Changes were made to Christianity, such as 18 books of the New Testament were destroyed, whereas there was originally 45 books. It became 27. Other significant changes included the birth of Jesus, including the Immaculate Conception, i.e. that his mother did not have relations with a man, she just became pregnant by the power of the Creator. And virgin birth, the celebration of Christmas, and the Trinity. During the life of Jesus, or even Mary for that matter, neither he nor she ever taught such stories. These commonly known stories were dreamed up in Rome centuries after the death of Jesus, who did not live, by the way. The original reports of the birth of Jesus were that he was born in a cave in Ethiopia, which is very important. And then they changed it at the Nicene Conference from Jesus being born in a cave in Ethiopia, which shows you the African connection with this religious work. The Romans created a fable of the child was born in a manger in Bethlehem. Another change was the conceptualization of Christmas, for it is not really a celebration of the birth of Jesus. The truth about Christmas is that long before the conversion to Christianity, the Romans celebrated the birth date of the sun god, the unconquered sun, on the 25th of December. This was a season of great celebration for the whole week, from the December the 17th to the 24th. No work was done. The one law was good cheer and goodwill to all men. And on the 25th, a festival was held honouring the birth of the unconquered sun, as in S-U-N. To keep this tradition, the Roman government made December the 25th the new birth date of Jesus. They merely went from worshipping the sun, S-U-N, to now worshipping the sun, S-O-N. Therefore, under the edict of Constantine, Roman and pagan traditions were maintained, only now with a Christian face. It is for that historical reason that so many people today worship on Sun Day, Sun God, rather than on the Sabbath as taught by Jesus. Those who persisted in the original practice of the seventh day were subsequently executed. Another dispute concerned whether to keep the Christian Passover, either the specific Jewish date that Christ and the apostles had observed, or the Roman day that the Roman Church kept, later called Easter Sunday. The council ruled in favour of Easter. Another dispute, the Arian controversy, and Arian was an African priest, about the nature of God. Arius, a black priest in Egypt, had been teaching the original Christian teaching that Jesus was created, was that the original Christian teaching that Jesus was a created being in the normal sense, being subordinate to God the Father. Roman Catholicism favored the Trinity, the idea of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit as three co-eternal and co-equal persons of the one God. The Council adopted the Trinity as the official Orthodox doctrine, and the original Christian way of praying only to God, the Father, was now outlawed. The popular Trinity is not of the original teaching, but is in fact from the Roman pagan influence. All that opposed Constantine were immediately put to death or banished. At the conclusion of this meeting, this is the Nicene Council, the only history of Christianity allowed to survive were those texts authorized by the emperor and written by Bishop Eusebius, who was Constantine's propagandist. This corruption of Christianity did not only limit itself to ancient Rome, it continued among the white race throughout Europe. White men took the Christian religion from Africa and spread it through the world, modifying it as they saw fit. In the name of Christianity, they fought wars, and slaughtered millions. No area of history or writing is too sacred for whites to leave slaughtered millions. No area of history or writing is sacred for whites to leave intact. They continued throughout history to alter the word of God to fit their will and their desires. This racist factor contributed to the writing of several versions of the Bible, each reflecting the views of the particular white groups they benefited. The first translation of the whole Bible happened in 1384. It's credited by John Wycliffe and called the Morning Star of the Reformation. His translation was denounced as heresy by the reigning King of England and was condemned in 1415. In 1428, his body was exhumed and burned. Okay, so they didn't muck around in those days. The first English version of the scriptures made by direct translation from the original Hebrew and Greek, and the first to be printed, was the work of William Tyndale. Again, he met bitter opposition. He was also accused of willfully perverting the meaning of the scriptures of his writings, were ordered to be burned as untrue translations. In October 1536, he was publicly executed and burnt at the stake. After the English government's execution of Tyndale, the King James Version of the Bible was published in 1611. King James of England, who was not a Christian and whose life was surrounded by homosexuality, commissioned 47 men, supposedly included Shakespeare and Francis Bacon, to rewrite the Bible, creating a more whitened version. In the reign of Bloody Mary, Tudor, 1553 to 1558, all printed English Bibles in England were stopped, and the British Bible could not be used in churches' services. Many Protestant leaders, perhaps as many as 800, sought refuge in the European continent. When James VI of Scotland ascended the throne of England and James I in 1603, there were two competing Bibles in the realm: the Bishop Bible, preferred by the church authorities, and the Geneva Bible, the favourite of the people. In January 1604, James called a conference of theologians and churchmen at Hampton Court for the hearing and for the determining things pretended to be amiss in the church. A Puritan leader, John Reynolds, president of the Corpus Christi College in Oxford, proposed that a new translation be made to replace two Bibles. The king, who had an amateur interest in the Bible translations, gave his approval, and on February the 10th, 1604, he ordered that a translation be made of the whole Bible, and that this is to be set out and printed without any marginal notes, and only to be used in all churches of England in the time of divine service. There were some fierce critics of the new Bible, notably the eminent Hebrew scholar Hugh Broughton, who had not been invited to work on it. He was preparing the Bible based on the Geneva Bible, but did not live long enough to see it published. It took nearly 40 years for the King James Version to replace this Geneva Bible in the affection of the people. Once established, it became the Bible of the English people for over 350 years, down to the present time. In 1870, the Church of England authorized a revision of the King James Version. 54 scholars, mostly Anglicans, that's the Church of England, Anglicans, were appointed. All of them were white, obviously, English, and they were Methodists, Presbyterians, Congregationalists, Baptists, and one Unitarian for the task. Americans were invited to participate by correspondence, with the provision that an American edition not be published until 14 years after publication of the British edition. The work was carefully, not to say pedantically, done. In the New Testament alone, about 30,000 changes were made. Over 5,000 changes were made with a better whitened Greek text as a criteria. So let me read that again. In the New Testament alone, about 30,000 changes were made. Over 5,000 changes were made with a better whitened Greek text as criteria. So when we read in the book now, and people swear by King James Version because I haven't got a clue about the history I just read about, there was just 30,000 changes just in the King James Version. And obviously the version before that, remember there was Geneva and the Bishop. So if you read a dictionary, it said when you read what is a version, it says something other than the original. And this is the King James Version. And remember there's versions, so King James Version is a version of versions. So when you're reading this book, we don't even know what the original book looked like. And as they said, even the Romans destroyed many books. There's a book you can buy, it's called The Lost Books of the Bible and the Forgotten Books of Eden, because they found the books that they destroyed. So again, if you are interested in this stuff, it's called The Lost Books of the Bible and the Forgotten Books of Eden. This is just one book. And you can see the old text. So in this text, it says that Jesus had an older brother, by the way. His name was James the Lesser. So, as you know, virgin birth, Jesus, Mary. But in this older Bible, which they destroyed, but they didn't destroy them all, they said Mary had other children. It just shows you don't understand the truth of what really happened, or the truth of the history of the Bibles. I continue. This is Brother Jegna. This is the Afrocentricity Bookman Show, and we are reading The Black Matrix by Franklin Jones. The following illustration is a replica of the little page of the authorized version of the King James Bible, published in 1611. Notice that all of the men portray the Europeans. So the original book was obviously by Africans, and the Europeans rewrote it and rewrote it and rewrote it and rewrote it. But what do Europeans really know about the original of the book? What do they know about spiritual affairs? Because through their science and stuff like that, they don't even believe that people have spirit, or they really think spirit is a minor area, very minor thing. But we are spirit. We are born, the African point of view, if the Creator created us, the Creator Spirit is within us. The Creator Spirit is within all of us. In the African view, everything is one. Yourself and everything you see around you is God. The Spirit is in everything, animate or inanimate, and that is African view. The reason why we have these meetings recently about the state of the planet, and everyone's destroying the planet, they're poisoning the air and the seas and the rivers and you name it, because they don't see the sacredness of all these things. They see all these things as inanimate and something you make money out of. There's nothing wrong with making money, but if you believe that the spirit is there, you probably take care of things much more. But these people see them as nothing. They see them as things to control and to dominate and to destroy if that's what they feel like doing. And that is why the planet is dying. At the moment, we have so many earthquakes and famines and tsunamis, you name it, we have it now. Far more than it was back in the day. The planet is heating up. But people who don't see the world as something to be respected or honoured will destroy the planet. And unfortunately, the people who control the world at the moment are those people. So, the Bible was rewritten by Europeans. None are of African heritage. How humorous it is that the white scholars represented men from Africa, such as Moses and many other prophets, as European. Many versions of the Bible were written in Europe, such as the Coverdale Bible, 1536, Thomas Matthew, 1557, the Great Bible, 1539, the Geneva Bible, 1560, and the Bishop's Bible, 1536, and several others. The translators who worked on the King James Version accounted for all of the previous versions. Compare them, took a little from each of them. They kept the fallacious phrases and expressions from whatever source, which had stood the test of public usage and European approval. In 1870, the Church of England published the English Revised Version of the Bible. That's 1870. These many different Bibles in Christendom, with clergy conflicting with others in some aspects of doctrine or practice, can be seen as evidence that they do not follow God's law. Thus, they cannot be from God. Compare Micah, M-I-C-A, 2:12, Mark 3:24, Roman 16:17, and Corinthians 10. What all these religious whites have done in common is that they do not hold fast to the Bible's teachings. Having violated the rule, do not go beyond the things that are written. From Corinthians 4:6. Also, see Matthew 5, verse 3 and 9 and 14. A significant change made in his Bibles was the removal of Africans. Subheading here, turning the Bible white. The white race's inherent tendency for rewriting ancient biblical history as white history may also be seen when examining the legitimacy of the white Jews of modern Israel. Currently, there is an established fear of challenging the legitimacy of white Jews because they use their history of persecution, which includes the Holocaust, as proof of anti-Semitism when any person or group challenges it. This enables white Jews to protect the heavily guarded fact that there is no connection between them and the ancient Hebrews of the Bible. Modern Jews are well financed and extremely well organized, are shielded from competing nations by powerful Western allies worldwide under the guise of preventing unfair persecution and preserving the Jewish image. The irrefutable fact is that the European Jews that presently occupy Israel are in no way whatsoever descendants of the ancient Hebrews of the Bible. Consider that the European Jews that now occupy Palestine territory, that is Israel today, are the descendants of those who survived World War II. They were settled in modern-day Israel between 1945 and 47. With massive financial support from the United States and United Nations based upon an alleged 8,000-year-old prophecy of the promise of God, Jehovah, to the Jews for the founding of their own nation of Israel. The actual lineage of these present-day Jews of Israel only goes back to the Ashkenazis. The Ashkenazis, Jews of Eastern Europe, whose ancestors merely converted from paganism to Judaism. The true descendants of the ancient Hebrews are Africa's black Ethiopian Jews. And when you read all the Greek and Roman writers says, the Hebrews are black people. The European Jews cannot connect their heritage with the ancient Hebrews of Africa, but black Ethiopian Jews' lineage is directly linked to the ancient Hebrews of the Bible. The black Jews have preserved their heritage and their stubborn beliefs in the Old Testament prophecy that they would one day be returned to Israel, or Jerusalem, I should say. Their elders had said for more than 2,000 years that they were the ones that came from Jerusalem, and that one day we will return to Jerusalem. Scholars have found references of the Jews of Ethiopia in Greek writings dating back 200 years before Christ, according to the Ethiopian tradition. Moreover, the Bible classes Ethiopian and Jews together. Are ye not children of Ethiopia unto me? Remember, see the Bible. O children of Israel, said the Lord. Chaldea, the land of which the Jews originated, was also a black land. In fact, as recently as 1940, the ruler of Ethiopia, Haile Selassie, could trace his lineage back directly to the Hebrews of the Bible. Haile Selassie was a son of Menelik II. Menelik II was a great warrior as well, who slaughtered the Italians who came to the land to destroy Ethiopia. I tell you what, let me interject 1 minute. Menelik II fought the Italians, Mussolini's people, and destroyed them, run them out of Ethiopia. And it's very important to note that, and also let me say, next year is the 145th anniversary of the Battle of Adwa. Adwa is where the final battle where they beat the Ethiopians. So I'll come back to that at another time. Chaldea, yeah. So they can chase their line. Haile Selassie was the son of Menelik II, a direct descendant of Menelik I. Menelik I was offspring. And the point I was going to make to you is that when the Italians were coming to try to conquer Ethiopia, the Roman Catholic Church blessed the bombs they were going to drop on Africans. There's pictures of the bishops and clergy from the Catholic Church blessing the bombs they are going to drop on African people to steal their land. Menelik I was offspring of the union between the Queen of Sheba, who was more correctly called Queen of Seba, and Solomon, directly out of the Bible. Similarly, Abraham was also black. So when the State of Israel was founded in 1948, the black Jews of Ethiopia, calling themselves Beta Israel, B-E-T-A, Beta Israel, or the chosen people, were more determined than ever to go back to their ancestral land. They wrote many letters to the white Jews in Israel, to America, and to the United Nations, asking for help in relocating to Israel. They identified themselves as actual flasher Jews of Ethiopia, led by Queen Judith, who through the bloodline of Solomon and Ethiopia's Queen of Sheba was the original Jew. It was their birthright after all, because as noted previously, Israel was promised to the Jews by God Jehovah. However, there was no answer until 1973, 28 years after writing. America and United Nations moral obligations to invest millions of dollars to create an Israel state for the European Jews is particularly noteworthy considered against the nearly 30 year of black Jews. Surely millions suffered and died during such a long period that their letters went unanswered. Even after a Marxist government assumed power in Ethiopia and began to oppress the black Jews there, that the European Jews did not act to help in spite of their persecution. Recognition of the flashers as Jews did not happen until 1970s, until after the persecution became publicized around the world. Subsequent damage to the image of the European Jews had led them to recognizing and assisting the Ethiopian Jews. Still, the white Jews refused to accept them as the true Jews, and instead Sephardi chief rabbi of Israel accepted them only as the seed of Israel, of the tribe of Dan, which swells in the mountains of Ethiopia. Thus the black Jews were accepted as some sort of subordinate to the white Jew and not the original Jews. So it's quite crazy. European Jews got nothing to do with Israel or the land all of a sudden become the Jews. And the Ethiopians, who you can trace the line back to the beginning of Judaism, are now just the seed of a tribe. So there we are. So with a subordinate status as a basis for acceptance of Jews, the US, Israel put together a covert plan called Operation Moses to airlift those forgotten people to Israel. European Jews, and concealing almost 50 years of cold indifference to Ethiopia, Jews cries for help. Even now, they are not treated as equals, and they face a lot of racism. The mistreatment of black Jews by the white Jews is not uncommon. The black Jews of India are now more permitted to enter the same synagogues as their whites, or to bury their dead in the same cemeteries. The black Jews of India are not permitted to enter the same synagogues as the whites, or bury their dead with the same cemeteries. Apartheid. Information that supports black Hebrews account their status as original Jews can be found in the book Things Not Generally Known, which is London 1879. This book was written by Reverend Robert Tuck. Since then it has been republished under the title of 540 Little Known Facts About the Bible. So if you want to look for that, guys, 540 facts, 540 Little Known Facts About the Bible, written by a Reverend Robert Tuck. The Queen of Seba, Azaba, that is, Queen of the South, or Ethiopia, pagan, Arab, Moor, Abyssinia, and all the countries around, says Bruce, vouch for the story pretty much. In the terms of scriptures, her name, the Arabs called Belkis, through the Abyssinians called her Makeda. The following passage details the Queen of Sheba's, Makeda, visit to the King Solomon and establishes her Ethiopian heritage. It is also known that she remained in Judea for some time, where she bore a son to Solomon and called him Menelik. So that's Menelik the First. And Selassie can trace his line back to Menelik the First. You see how the Ethiopian Jew is really a European name. It's really Ethiopian. Hebrews would be more of a correct name. The Abyssinians, both Jews and Christians, believe that Psalm 45 is a prophecy of this queen's journey to Jerusalem. Solomon is said to have educated his son, and when the prince's education was finished, he was anointed and crowned king of Ethiopia in the temple of Jerusalem. He returned home, taking with him a colony of Jews, with many doctors of the Mosaic law, particularly one doctor from each tribe, to be made judges in his own land. Menelik was also accompanied by the Azarias, son of Zadok, the priest who claimed him as a Hebrew, the priest who carried him with a Hebrew copy of the law and bore the title of high priest. This passage is beyond a shadow of doubt the same as the generations old story told by the black Jews regarding their heritage. In present-day Ethiopia, there remain those who say that they are the true Jews, or black Hebrews. For centuries, the northern provinces of Gondar and Tigray, there lived a people known as the Falasha, a word meaning strangers or exiles in Amharic, the modern Ethiopian language. They call themselves Beta Israel, that's B-E-T-A, Israel, which means the house of Israel. They are the lost tribe of black Jews of Ethiopia, according to Ethiopian tradition. The black Jews was a descendant of the Jews brought from their country, from Jerusalem by King Menelik, the son of Solomon and Sheba. For more than 2,000 years, the black Jews of Ethiopia, a remnant of the lost tribes of Israel, preserved their heritage and their stubborn belief in the Old Testament prophecy that one day they will return to Jerusalem. In 1970, after a Marxist government assumed power in Ethiopia and began to oppress religious minorities, these Jews were more determined than ever to go back to their ancestral home, but immigration was banned. Excuse me. And the way out was paved with peril. Those excerpts are from 100 Amazing Facts About the Negro by J.A. Rogers, published in 1957. In 1847, Joseph Halevi, a scholar and French Jew, visited the black Jews, who he commented Here, a traveller with white skin who says he's a Jew. In other words, black Jews could hardly believe Halevi was Jewish. Why? Was it not written that the original Jews were of Semitic race, the descendants of Shem? Doesn't history show that the Jews captured by Egypt bore the same name or the same characteristics as the Egyptians? Therefore, Moses was able to live as an Egyptian. So, how is it that the entire world has been deceived? We know that the original Bible was written in the land of those who were said to be cursed, which is a lie. The Bible, when then travelled to Western Europe. It was originally only read by the high priest and then translated in his own words and given to the people. Also, there is a story of Joseph the Hebrew, sold as a slave in Egypt. When Joseph's brother came to Egypt, they mistook him for an Egyptian because the Egyptian and Hebrew were the same colour. That is Genesis 37:36. 37, chapter 36 to 41. Moreover, the Jews are said to be slaves of the Egyptians for nearly 430 years. Only 70 Jews went to Israel with Jacob. The Bible says that 600,000 left. So from 70 to 600,000 with Moses, according to the Hashofah, means a total of 3 million with men, women and children. For this large number to have left, mixing with the Egyptians who were black, must have taken place on a vast scale. About 12 million Africans were brought to the New World. Imagine how much of their original colour and culture the latter would take with them should they return to Africa. And you realise how much the original Jews remained. And only 70 Jews returned after centuries. Tacitus, Roman historian, says the Romans of his day properly believed the Jews, which then abounded in Europe, came from Ethiopia, the land of the blacks. You hear that? Tacitus, Roman emperor. So remember, these Roman emperors, none of these Roman historians spoke about Jesus, by the way. Not one of the Roman historians spoke about Jesus. But they said that the Hebrews came from Africa. The present white colour of the Europeans and American Jew is very likely related to the same causes of light skin, straight hair of a large number of blacks. Excuse me. First of all, the charge of anti-Semitism used by whites, Jews, to discourage anyone or group to question or challenge their legitimacy does not even actually refer to European Jews. The original definition of Semitic, which does not include white European characteristics, it was used exclusively for Afro and Afro-Asiatic people. Let me say that Semitic is a language. So when they talk about anti-Semitic, they talk about anti-language, by the way, if you understand what these terms actually mean. The change in the Hebrew language was made by the Babylonian captivity. During the Babylonian captivity, it is evidence that the language of the people of Hebrew script had materially changed during the time in Babylonia. The original people of Babylonia were Cushites. If you check out Genesis 10:8-10. Hebrew Cush. This is proven by many scriptures that predate those of the Assyrian kingdom, which are in an Ethiopian Cushite dialect. This clearly shows that many biblical scholars have chosen to ignore that the inhabitants of ancient Babylonia were Cushites and spoke an Ethiopian language. It is well known that the Ethiopians are black, as were the inhabitants of Babylon, the builders of the Tower of Babel. The land of Cush was the ancient designation of Ethiopia. That section of Africa, contiguous with Egypt and the Red Sea, is home to a people who have always been defined as black people by the ancient writings and by today's standards. However, what is most intriguing about the land is their true and hidden history within the Bible, such as Cush was also the father of Nimrod, the king of Babylon. Even Abraham was a relative of Cush and is traditionally linked to his birthplace in Ur of Chaldea, which again is Babylon. So we're going to wind up now. It's almost the hour. It's almost 6 o'clock. We are really near to getting rid of the book now, so it probably finishes next week. So this is the Afrocentricity Bookman Show. This is Brother Jegna. We are reading The Black Matrix by Franklin Jones. We will continue reading again to probably finish the book by next week. Please remember that what we do for ourselves depends on what we know about ourselves. And what we think about ourselves. And what we think about ourselves depends on what we know about ourselves. And what we know about ourselves depends on what we are taught about ourselves. So this is Brother Jegna, checking out until next week. You have a great week, and I'll catch you next week, okay? One love.
This show is sponsored by Glass R Us, 730 Seven Sisters Road, London, N15 5NH. Call Glass R Us for all your glazing needs on 0208 800 6663. For your glass and double glazing repairs, shelving, tabletops, splashbacks, mirrors, shower cubicles, balustrades and balconies.
You can trust Glass R Us because they are completely transparent.
Angela dancing in heaven. Wake up, people, wake up, wake up. Wake up, people, wake up now, wake up. Wake up, people, wake up, wake up. Wake up the people, Lord, wake up. Wake up, people, wake up, wake up. Wake up, people, wake up now, wake up. Wake up, people, wake up, wake up. Wake up the people, Lord, wake up. It's alright. It's okay. Remember, the sun will shine in the morning. God bless. Wake up.